So as I said earlier on, we've got some really interesting content on this stage today. Without further ado, I'm going to invite the marketing director of Lucky Saint, and she's going to forgive me if I pronounce this incorrectly because she's such a lovely woman, Kerttu Inkeroinen. And she's going to come and talk to us about how Lucky Saint became, from literally nowhere, a more popular brand and a bigger and more recognisable than the likes of British Airways, Mattel, et al. So it's a great story, and let's put our hands together and welcome Kerttu to the stage.
That was very good. Thanks very much. So hello, thanks so much for coming to listen. My name is Kerttu, Marketing and E-commerce Director at Lucky Saint. And as per the intro, I was asked to come and talk about how we, as a young challenger brand, got voted Marketing Society's Brand of the Year last year. And we were up against global competition from IKEA, McDonald's with their Race to Archies, British Airways, Mattel with Barbie. And the question was, how the hell did you manage to win the title and got through? So I thought what I talk about is one of the things I think we do well as a business, which is to codify our thinking. And we call them mantras, and we have many of them, but I'm going to talk today about one of them, which I think is the most important one, which is called break rules, honor traditions. And what this means is that we believe that as a small brand with small budgets, everything we do must be 10 times more effective than what some of the major competition is doing. So how do we do it? We think about how do we operate in the category that we work in, which is the beer category, and how do we think about when do we need to break the rules of those category conventions in order to stand out, but also then when do we need to honor traditions. So I think often as a challenger brand, there's a view that you need to be breaking rules every time and in everything you do, but we do think it's also important sometimes to know when you lean into those conventions. So I'm going to go through hopefully some very tangible examples of how we think about it and how it comes to life, but a quick intro to the brand first, for those of you who might not know us so well. Lucky Saint is 5 years young, so started by Luke Bose 5 years ago. He started to moderate his alcohol intake, but found that there wasn't really an alcohol-free beer that was tasting great and was a brand that spoke to him. So he decided to launch his own. And he discovered that he wasn't actually the only one moderating, so now 75% of us are moderating our alcohol intake. And I don't know anybody who's saying that I want to be drinking more alcohol this year than I did last year. And this might be surprising, but it's a really fast evolving and growing category, and 1 in 3 visits to pubs are now alcohol-free. But there's a huge growth opportunity, and there's some barriers to category entry. So in the UK, alcohol-free beer is still only 2% of the total beer category, versus elsewhere in Europe, it's up to 15 and 17%. So I'm going to come back to that 2% a little bit later, but we need to be bringing more people into the category drinking alcohol-free. And in 5 years, we are 60 people. We are based above our pub in Marylebone. We've got over 15,000 distribution points across UK and Ireland in on and off trade and online. And we are the UK's #1 dedicated alcohol-free beer brand, and also UK's most loved alcohol-free beer brand. But we have a much bigger ambition, which is to build the world's defining alcohol-free brand. And this, personally, for me, is why I joined the business, so to be part of something that's really category game-changing. And it's purposefully defining and not the largest. So what we mean by it, we want to be synonymous to a category, like Dyson is vacuums, Tesla for electric cars, and Guinness for stout. So we want to be what people are ordering at the bar instead of any alcohol-free beer. So how do you do that when you're a challenger brand with challenger brand budgets? I think about being a challenger brand often like being in a David versus Goliath fight. So it is possible to win, but you need to find those stones which are your competitive edges which will help you cut through. And for us, one of the is our creative. So we look at creative as a David versus Goliath stone on helping us break the rules of the category conventions and purposefully going the other way than some of the other brands in order to cut through. And I think we can all think about some of the iconic, amazing beer advertising of the past, but also a lot of it might be focusing on the liquid or lifestyle shots or summer shots, or in the case of alcohol-free, often talking about no compromise. So we are purposefully doing something different in order to be distinctive and build a really distinctive, ownable brand. And what we want to do with our creative is to create tension. So very much leaning into emotional, not the rational messaging in our marketing. And we create tension by leaning into religious references. And it might not feel natural to have alcohol and religion together, but for us it goes back to our name, the Lucky Saint. And it also goes back to beer brewing heritage, which started in monasteries hundreds of years ago. So images like our saint or the nun with the beer bottle are there to create that emotional reaction and tension in order to stand out. And we really over-invest in long-term assets. So for a small brand, we invest a lot in our creative. So our photography is by artists like Rankin and Sun Lee, but we then use those assets for a long time to really sweat those assets. And we are very purposefully aiming to build a distinctive and ownable brand world. And this black and white world is something that we've not really seen a lot of other brands do in beer or FMCG otherwise, so very much leaning more into the sort of artistic world, but in order to build that category-defining, distinctive brand. And we also use a lot of our tone of voice. So I think tone of voice is often underutilized in marketing. So the religious references flow through in our tone of voice. And again, we are here leaning more into that emotional side. So not talking about rational messages around no compromise and taste, but really trying to evoke the reaction and build a distinctive brand also with the tone of voice. And that goes from advertising to everything in social, CRM, packaging, so be a saint, recycle, and also internal comms. So we vote for Saint of the Month every month, and our senior team is called the Senior Saints. Some of them are here today, thank you very much. And I talk a lot about fresh consistency, and what we mean by this is trying not to get bored of our creative before consumers do, as hard as it is. So we are really aiming to build this consistent key visual look, and then we bring freshness to the campaign with new copy lines. So all of these images are from different campaigns from our past 2 years, but hopefully you can see the consistency across. And it also goes through things like our new product launches. So we launched Hazy IPA, and I'll play a very quick clip so you can hear how that religious reference goes also into our sonic world. So that's how we break the rules of the beer category conventions in creative. And the second area is activation. So again, what is our David versus Goliath stone here? And it's often an obvious thing, and for us it is that we are alcohol-free only brand. So it could be disadvantage not to have a major mother brand to borrow from, but actually we look at it from the point of view of what can we do to really utilize it to our advantage. So where can we go where some of our major competition can't, because we are alcohol-free only. And that's been really purposeful from the start to build aspirational brand, which is not the zero version, and it's not a comparison to something else. So a couple of examples. One is our activation in sport. So sports is a very traditional activation territory for beer brands, so rugby, football. However, most often activation is against the viewers of the sport. So here we break the rules by activating with the doers of the sport. So we activate a lot in the space of running and cycling. And I'll show you a quick clip of our activation in Hackney Half Marathon this May, so you can see how it looks like. So it probably looks a bit more like a sports drink activation than a beer brand activation. And we also do things like we are the first ever beer brand to partner with Strava, the sports tracking app, because as an alcohol-free only brand we can. And we've got hundreds of thousands of people taking part in our sport challenges every year. Then the other area where we break the rules is partnerships. So again, very traditional marketing territory, but we look at what can we do that our competition can't in the partnership space. And one of the most impactful things we've done in the past couple of years is to partner with Alcohol Change UK to be the official beer of Dry January. And January, key category moment for the category with people thinking about going dry or moderating. And partnering with Alcohol Change UK has been giving us the credibility with customers and consumers and that relevancy in that time. And it's something none of our major competition could do because of having full strength beer in their portfolio, so Alcohol Change UK couldn't work with them. And then also distribution. So thinking about distribution as a marketing tool to expand those consumer consumption moments and make people think differently about when can they drink alcohol-free beer versus full-strength beer. And one of those things has been partnering with Sainsbury's to be part of their lunch meal deal. So you can buy a packet of crisps, a sandwich, and a Lucky Saint for your lunch meal deal. And actually, our social media announcement of this deal has been our most popular piece of content in the past year, with close to 1 million organic views. So it shows how much traction you can get when you appear in unexpected places with your consumers. And latest research is showing that 75% of us thinks that it is acceptable for your colleague to crack open alcohol-free beer at lunch. So next time you're close to Sainsbury's, go and crack one. You can drink at your desk. So there's a couple of ways of how we think about how we break the rules of the beer category to stand out. But the other part of the mantra is honor traditions. And this is where I go back to that 2% that I said at the start. We still have a lot of barriers for the category entry, and we don't need to just stand out from the competition. We also need to bring more people into the category and more people drinking alcohol-free beer. And actually, here often it makes more sense to lean into those category conventions. So one of the ways and areas where we do that is in how we brew our beer. So we know that what consumers want from alcohol-free beer is for it to taste like full-strength beer. So we brew our beer in traditional methods, for natural ingredients, product quality, and taste is key. Secondly, we also honor traditions in how we serve, and this is about really big focus in draft distribution. And it might not feel innovative for a beer brand to go on draft, but if you think a few years back for alcohol-free, it is. So it didn't really exist a couple of years ago. And we think that this is a really big category unlock. And I don't know if any of you have ever been in a pub or bar and you are part of a group buying rounds and you're the one not drinking. Probably feel a little bit sad and left out when your part of the round is a soft drink or something in a bottle. So this is something we really are focusing on and want to change. And our belief is that the greatest reward of drinking is the social connection and not the alcohol. And if you think back to thousands of years of human history, so many of our social connection moments and celebrations are linked to alcohol. What we want to do as a brand is to make sure that everybody, whether they are drinking or not drinking, can take part in those social occasions. And being on draft is a big part of that. And social acceptance is still a major barrier to the category. And there's a funny story told by a pub manager of one of our customer groups of 5 guys who were buying rounds of drinks, and every time one of them went to the bar, they would buy themselves a Lucky Saint in a pint and everybody else a full-strength beer. And they all did this throughout the evening without telling each other. And it says a couple of things. One is a lot of us want to moderate, but secondly, there's still social stigma around that. And that is what we are here to change, and there's a couple of ways we can change it. One is to build an aspirational brand that people are proud to drink, but secondly, it's also serving it in a way that people feel included and in the way that they want to enjoy it. And we focus a lot on supporting the draft distribution, so we do things like, if you go on our website, you can find a tap map where you can put in your postcode and find your local serving Lucky Saint on draft. And in January, we did localized out-of-home posters outside the pubs that were serving Lucky Saint on draft, giving away free pints. And we also use our CRM database to tell our customers where they can find Lucky Saint on draft. And we are now the #1 dedicated alcohol-free beer on draft in the UK with over 1,000 distribution points. Lastly, honouring traditions with our pub. So a little over a year ago, we opened a pub in Marylebone called the Lucky Saint, and please all come if you haven't been yet. It was set up as a home for our staff, so we have our offices on top. It's pretty cool to work in a pub, but also a brand home, and it is a working pub. And whenever I tell people that we've got a pub, the first assumption is it's a dry one, and it purposefully isn't, so we serve both alcoholic and alcohol-free options. That goes back to understand that most of our consumers are actually moderators, not teetotalers. So sometimes they're drinking, sometimes not. They're going to be in mixed groups. And actually more and more, apparently 25% of us now are alternating between alcoholic and alcohol-free options in the same session, which is called zebra striping. So very much with our pub leaning into traditions rather than trying to break the mold. So that was a quick tour of how we think about breaking rules of the category conventions and where do we think about leaning in. And hopefully if you're working on a challenger brand, there was something that sparked a thought. As the key takeaways, I would say, first of all, define your North Star. Very obvious, but so important to direct your marketing activation and to fire up your team. And then secondly, think about what are your David versus Goliath stones that you can use to break the category conventions to stand out. But then also think about where do you need to honor those category conventions and lean in. Thank you very much.